Would you visit your brother if he was in prison? But what if you had a brother nobody knew about? Someone born from the same father, but who you'd never met? LeBron James has such a brother, Aaron McClelland, 38 years old, in an Ohio prison, and LeBron has been quietly visiting him for 17 years, doesn't tell the media, doesn't explain to his family, he just goes, why? Because Aaron is who LeBron could have been, but wasn't. Same DNA, same abandonment, same poverty, but different outcome. One became a billionaire athlete, the other, an inmate. And this story shows just how fragile success really is. November 2006, LeBron James, 21 years old, and already an NBA superstar, received a letter at the Cleveland Cavaliers facility. Fan mail wasn't unusual. He got hundreds of letters every week. But this one was different. It came from the Ohio State Correctional Facility in Youngstown, and it started with 5 words that stopped LeBron cold. I think I'm your brother. The letter was from Aaron McClelland, age 21, exactly the same age as LeBron. He was serving a 5-year sentence for armed robbery. In the letter, Aaron explained that his mother had told him, shortly before she died, that his biological father was a man named Anthony McClelland, the same man rumored to be LeBron's father. Anthony McClelland had never been part of LeBron's life. Gloria James, LeBron's mother, had raised him alone. She'd told LeBron that Anthony had disappeared before he was born, one of several men who could have been his father but who'd chosen not to be involved. LeBron had grown up without a father, had struggled with that absence, but had ultimately made peace with it. He had his mother. He had basketball. That was enough. But now, here was a letter from someone claiming to share his blood. Someone who'd grown up in the same city, Akron, Ohio. Someone who'd faced the same poverty, the same absent father, the same systemic obstacles. But someone who'd ended up in prison while LeBron had ended up in the NBA. LeBron almost threw the letter away. He didn't need this complication in his life. He had a rookie contract, endorsement deals, a daughter on the way with his high school sweetheart Savannah. He was building something. The last thing he needed was someone from his past, or his father's past, trying to claim a piece of it. But something made him keep reading. Aaron's letter wasn't asking for money, wasn't asking for favors or recognition. It was just honest, raw. A young man in prison trying to understand who he was and where he came from. I don't know if you'll even read this, Aaron had written. You're LeBron James. Why would you care about some guy in prison? But I saw you play against the Pistons last week. They showed the game here, and I swear I was looking in a mirror. Same face, same build, same way you move, and I thought that could have been me, should have been me, maybe, if things had been different. So I'm writing because I need to know, are we brothers? Did the same man abandon both of us? And if so, why did you make it out, and I didn't? That last question haunted LeBron. Why had he made it when so many others from similar circumstances hadn't? He'd asked himself that question many times over the years, especially as he watched friends from Akron struggle with poverty, addiction, crime. He'd been lucky, had basketball as an escape, had coaches who cared, had his mother who sacrificed everything for him. But what about the kids who didn't have those things? What about the Aaron McClellands of the world? LeBron hired a private investigator. Within 3 weeks, he had his answer. DNA test results showed a 99.7% probability that LeBron and Aaron shared a biological father. They were half-brothers, same deadbeat dad who'd abandoned them both, but wildly different outcomes. LeBron sat with those results for 2 weeks, not knowing what to do. Tell his mother, tell Savannah, go public, ignore it completely. Every option felt wrong. Finally, he made a decision. He would visit Aaron, not as LeBron James, superstar, just as a brother, someone trying to understand. The first visit was December 15, 2006. LeBron drove to Youngstown himself, no security detail, wearing a hood and hat to avoid being recognized. He'd called ahead under an assumed name, arranged a private visiting room to avoid other inmates and guards realizing who he was. When Aaron walked into the visiting room, the resemblance was startling. He looked like a slightly rougher version of LeBron, same height, 6'8", same build, same facial structure. If you put them side by side, anyone could tell they were related. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then Aaron laughed, a bitter sound. Damn, it's true, we really are brothers. Looks like it, LeBron said. You didn't have to come. I know you're busy being famous and rich. I came because I needed to understand. How did this happen? How did we end up so different when we started from the same place? Aaron sat down heavily. You want the long version or the short version? I've got time. And so Aaron told his story. Born in Akron, just like LeBron, mother struggled with addiction. Father Anthony McClelland wasn't around. Bounced between his mother's place and foster homes. No stability, no structure. He'd been a good athlete too. Played basketball and football in high school. But he'd also started selling drugs at 14 to help his mother pay rent. I was good at basketball, Aaron said. Not LeBron James good, but good enough for college maybe. But when you're hustling to keep the lights on, basketball seems like a fantasy. The streets were real, the money was real. I chose what seemed real. By 17, Aaron had been arrested twice for drug possession. By 19, he was running with a crew that robbed convenience stores. By 21, he'd been caught after a robbery went wrong, and he was sentenced to 5 years. And you? Aaron asked. How'd you avoid all that? LeBron thought about it. Basketball. And my mum, she made sure I stayed focused on basketball, made sure I stayed in school, made sure I saw a way out. I didn't have that, Aaron said quietly. My mum tried, but she was fighting her own demons. Nobody saw potential in me, the way people saw it in you. Nobody protected me, so I fell through the cracks. That conversation changed something in LeBron. He realized Aaron wasn't a villain or a cautionary tale. He was a person who'd been dealt an impossible hand and had played it the only way he knew how, and the only real difference between them was luck. Luck that Gloria James had stayed clean. Luck that LeBron's middle school basketball coach had seen his potential. Luck that the right people had intervened at the right times. LeBron started visiting Aaron regularly, once a month at first, then every few weeks. He never told anyone, not his mother, not Savannah, not his teammates. These visits were private, personal, a connection to a part of his past and a parallel life he'd barely escaped. During those visits, they talked about everything: their absent father, their childhoods, basketball, prison life, LeBron's career. They weren't trying to be best friends, too much had separated their lives for that, but they were trying to understand each other, to find common ground in their shared blood and divergent fates. One conversation in particular, during a visit in 2010, stayed with LeBron forever. They were talking about their father, Anthony McClelland, the man who had abandoned them both. You ever try to find him? Aaron asked. Once, LeBron admitted. When I was 16, hired someone to track him down, found out he was in and out of jail, homeless, addicted. I thought about reaching out, but my mum talked me out of it, said he'd already made his choice by not being there, and I didn't owe him anything. I found him, Aaron said quietly. 2 years before I came to prison, he was living under a bridge in Cleveland. I brought him food, tried to talk to him, wanted to ask him why he left, why he never came back for either of us. What did he say? He didn't remember us. The drugs and alcohol had destroyed his brain. He looked at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. We talked for maybe 10 minutes, and then he asked me for money for his next high. That's when I realized he wasn't worth finding. He wasn't some tragic figure with deep reasons for abandoning us. He was just a weak man who made selfish choices and never looked back. LeBron absorbed this. He'd spent years wondering about his father, imagining what he'd say if they ever met, building up this absent figure into something significant. But Aaron had found him and discovered there was nothing there, just emptiness and addiction. Did that help? LeBron asked, knowing the truth about him. In a way, it let me stop imagining him as something he wasn't, stop giving him power over my life. He's nobody, just DNA. The real question isn't why he left, it's what we do with the life we got despite him. That conversation shifted something in LeBron. He stopped thinking about his absent father as some missing piece of his identity. Anthony McClelland wasn't a father. He was just a biological contributor who'd chosen not to be present. Gloria James was his parent, the one who'd stayed, sacrificed, fought for him. That was what mattered. You know what's crazy? Aaron continued. We both grew up without a dad, but you had a mum who was present, who fought for you. My mum tried, but she was fighting her own battles with addiction. So you had one stable parent, and I had none. That one difference, that's probably why you're out there winning championships and I'm in here. It's not fair, LeBron said. No, but it's real. Life isn't fair. Some kids get 2 parents, some get 1, some get none. Some are born rich, some poor, some have opportunities, some don't. We can cry about it, or we can accept it and figure out how to help the kids coming up behind us so they don't end up like me. Those words coming from a man in prison who had every right to be bitter struck LeBron deeply. Aaron wasn't making excuses. He was acknowledging reality while still taking responsibility for his choices. That kind of wisdom, from someone society had written off as a criminal, reminded LeBron that intelligence and insight aren't determined by circumstances or outcomes. Another pivotal moment came in 2013, after LeBron had won his second championship with Miami. He visited Aaron with the championship ring, wanting to share the accomplishment with his brother. Aaron held the ring, feeling its weight. This is amazing, Bron. You earned this. We earned it, LeBron said. Every time I step on that court, I'm playing for both of us, for the life you could have had if things had been different. Aaron handed the ring back carefully. Don't do that. Don't put that weight on yourself. Your success isn't my failure. These are separate lives. You didn't steal my destiny. There was no destiny. Just circumstances and choices. You made good ones, I made bad ones, that's it. But if you'd had my opportunities, maybe I'd have succeeded, maybe I'd have failed anyway. We'll never know. And that's okay. Stop trying to carry my burden, Bron. You've got enough pressure being LeBron James. You don't need to be responsible for who I could have been. That conversation freed something in LeBron. He'd been carrying guilt, survivor's guilt essentially, about his success while Aaron struggled. But Aaron was right. They were separate people making separate choices. LeBron could support Aaron without taking responsibility for Aaron's outcomes. The visits also revealed Aaron's depth in ways that surprised LeBron. In prison, Aaron had become a voracious reader. Philosophy, history, psychology, sociology. He'd use their visits to discuss books he'd read, ideas he was wrestling with. During a 2015 visit, Aaron brought up a book he'd just finished, The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander, about mass incarceration and systemic racism. This book explains my whole life, Aaron said, how the system is designed to funnel poor black kids into prison. How once you're in, you're trapped in a cycle. I used to think I was just weak, just a failure, but this book shows how the game is rigged. Not as an excuse, I still made my choices, but as context. The system wanted me to fail. Then we need to change the system, LeBron said. That's what your foundation should focus on, not just basketball camps and schools, though those are great, but criminal justice reform, re-entry programs, stopping the pipeline that sends kids from struggling schools straight to prison. You have the platform, use it. That conversation directly influenced LeBron's increased activism around social justice issues. He started speaking out more about mass incarceration, police brutality, systemic racism. He funded programs for formerly incarcerated individuals. He used his platform to advocate for policy changes. And every time someone criticized him for being too political or told him to shut up and dribble, he thought about Aaron, about the thousands of Aarons trapped in a system designed to fail them, about how silence was complicity. In 2016, during one of the most emotionally charged visits, Aaron opened up about something he'd never discussed before, the night he'd been arrested for the armed robbery that sent him to prison the first time. I need you to know something, Aaron said, his voice heavy. That night, the robbery that got me 5 years, I didn't plan to hurt anyone. We thought the store would be empty. But there was a clerk, an older woman, maybe 60. She was supposed to be off that night but had stayed late to finish inventory. LeBron listened, saying nothing. When we came in with the gun, it wasn't even loaded, not that that matters. She looked so scared, terrified, started crying. And in that moment, I saw my own mother's face, saw what I'd become. But it was too late. We took the money and ran, and I got caught 3 blocks away. Aaron's eyes filled with tears. That woman, Mrs. Patterson, I learned her name during the trial. She had a heart attack 2 months later. Her family said it was from the stress of the robbery. She died, Bron, because of what I did. It wasn't legally my fault. She didn't die that night. But I know the truth. I helped kill that woman. LeBron felt the weight of that confession. Have you tried to contact her family? I wrote them a letter, from prison, apologizing, explaining, I never wanted anyone hurt, telling them I think about Mrs. Patterson every single day. They never wrote back, and I don't blame them. What could I say that would matter? Sorry, I traumatized your mother so badly she died. There's no apology for that. But you're trying to change. Changing doesn't bring her back. That's what people don't understand about prison. Yeah, I'm getting better, learning, growing, but that doesn't undo the harm. Mrs. Patterson is still dead. Her grandkids still grew up without her. My growth doesn't fix that. That conversation haunted LeBron for weeks. It made him understand that Aaron's story wasn't simple redemption. There were real victims, real harm that couldn't be undone. Aaron's journey toward being better didn't erase the past. It just meant moving forward despite it. It also made LeBron think about his own responsibility. He'd never committed a crime, never hurt anyone like Aaron had. But he had a platform, resources, influence. Was he doing enough with those things? Was he using his privilege to help, or was he just coasting on his success? That introspection led to LeBron becoming more intentional about his philanthropy and activism. The I Promise School wasn't just about education. It was about wrapping at-risk kids in support before they ended up like Aaron, before they made irreversible mistakes, before they hurt people the way Aaron had hurt Mrs. Patterson. In 2008, Aaron's sentence was up. He was released, and LeBron was there to pick him up. He'd arranged a job for Aaron at a community center in Akron, helping run youth basketball programs. He'd also rented him an apartment. Nothing fancy, but clean and safe. I'm not doing this for publicity, LeBron told Aaron on the drive back to Akron. Nobody can know about this. I'm doing it because you're my brother, because you deserve a chance. But you have to stay clean. You have to stay out of trouble. I can give you opportunities, but I can't live your life for you. I understand, Aaron said, and I appreciate it. I really do. For about 8 months it worked.
Aaron ran basketball camps for at-risk kids. He was good at it, understood these kids in a way that suburban coaches never could. He knew what it was like to have nothing, to feel hopeless, to think crime was the only option. He could speak to them authentically, but old patterns are hard to break. Aaron started hanging around old friends from his pre-prison days, started drinking heavily, missed work. The community center had to let him go. LeBron tried to intervene. Aaron, you're throwing away your second chance. You can't go back to that life. It's easy for you to say. Aaron shot back. They were in Aaron's apartment, and Aaron was drunk. You have millions of dollars, a mansion, fame, respect. What do I have? A shitty apartment and a minimum wage job I just lost. We're not the same, Bron. Stop acting like we are. We could be the same if I'd just what? Work hard? Try harder? I've been trying my whole life. You think you're where you are because you worked harder than everyone else? You're where you are because you got lucky. Right place, right time, right body for basketball. I didn't get lucky. That's the difference. The argument ended with LeBron leaving, frustrated and hurt. He'd been trying to help, trying to be a brother, and Aaron was throwing it back in his face. 2 months later, Aaron was arrested again, possession with intent to distribute. He'd gone back to selling drugs. This time, he got 12 years. LeBron was devastated. He'd tried to help, had given Aaron every opportunity, and Aaron had still ended up back in prison. Maybe some people couldn't be saved. Maybe Aaron was just destined for this life, regardless of what help he received. But then LeBron got another letter from Aaron, this time from a different prison. It was an apology. I know I let you down, Aaron wrote. I know you tried to help and I threw it away. I was angry. Angry at Dad for leaving. Angry at the world for dealing me a shitty hand. Angry at you for succeeding when I failed. That anger made me self-destruct. But I'm working on it now. Got into a prison program for addiction and anger management. I'm actually trying this time. Not for you, for me. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry. And I don't expect you to care anymore. I get it if you're done with me. LeBron read that letter 3 times. He had every reason to be done with Aaron. Had tried to help and been burned. Had wasted time and money and emotional energy on someone who seemingly didn't want to change. But Aaron was still his brother. And LeBron knew better than most how hard it was to escape your circumstances, how easy it was to fall back into old patterns when that's all you've ever known. So LeBron wrote back. And then he visited. And the visits continued. 17 years now through Aaron's entire sentence. The visits changed over the years. At first they were tense. LeBron was disappointed in Aaron. Aaron was defensive and ashamed. But gradually something shifted. They stopped trying to fix each other and just started being brothers, talking about life, sports, books Aaron was reading, LeBron's kids, prison politics, everything and nothing. Aaron got clean in prison, really clean this time, completed his GED, took college courses, became a mentor to younger inmates. It was like the structure of prison, ironic as it sounds, finally gave him what he'd never had on the outside: stability, routine, purpose. I'm better in here than I ever was out there, Aaron admitted during one visit in 2015. I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. Out there I had too many choices and no idea how to make them. In here everything's decided for me, and somehow that's what I needed. What happens when you get out in 20? You'll have all those choices again. I don't know, Aaron said honestly. Maybe I'll fail again. Maybe I'll end up right back here. But I'm trying to learn the skills so I don't. Trying to understand myself better. Trying to figure out why I sabotage myself. LeBron thought about his own life, about how many times he could have made different choices that would have led to very different outcomes, about how his success wasn't just hard work but also circumstances, timing, people who cared at crucial moments. You know what's crazy? LeBron said, everyone thinks success is about hard work and talent, and yeah, those matter, but so does luck, and support systems, and opportunities. If I'd been born to your mum instead of mine, I'd probably be sitting on your side of this table. We're not that different, Aaron. I just got luckier. Maybe, Aaron said. Or maybe you're just stronger than me, better than me. I'm not better than you. I'm just luckier. That's all. Luck isn't fair, but it's real. Over the years, LeBron started understanding something profound. He visited Aaron not just for Aaron's sake, but for his own. These visits reminded him where he came from, reminded him how easily his life could have gone differently, reminded him that his success wasn't just his own achievement, but the result of countless factors beyond his control. And that understanding changed how LeBron saw the world.
Made him more compassionate, more aware of his privilege, more committed to using his platform and resources to help people who hadn't gotten lucky the way he had. The I Promise School, LeBron's school for at-risk kids in Akron, was directly inspired by his relationship with Aaron. I want to be for these kids what nobody was for Aaron, LeBron explained to the school's administrators. A support system, a safety net, someone who sees potential and protects it. Because there are thousands of Aarons out there, kids who could be anything if someone just gave them a chance and didn't give up on them when they struggled. In 2020, Aaron was released again. This time, LeBron didn't set him up with a job or apartment. He'd learned that trying to control Aaron's life didn't work. Instead, he told Aaron, "I'm here if you need me, for advice, for support, for emergency help, but your life is yours to live. Your choices are yours to make. I'm your brother, not your savior." "I appreciate that," Aaron said, "because I think I need to figure this out on my own, for real this time." Aaron moved into a halfway house, got a job at a warehouse, started attending NA meetings, slowly rebuilt his life. He relapsed once, disappeared for a week, but then came back and got clean again. It was messy and imperfect, but it was progress. LeBron still visited him, though now it was at a coffee shop instead of a prison. Every few months, they'd meet up, talk for an hour, then go their separate ways. It wasn't a fairy tale relationship. They weren't best friends, but they were brothers, and that meant something. In 2023, a reporter found out about Aaron, started asking questions, was preparing a story about LeBron's secret half-brother in prison. Aaron had been reincarcerated for a parole violation in 2022. Nothing violent, just a failed drug test. LeBron's publicist asked him, "How do you want to handle this? We can deny, deflect, or get ahead of it." LeBron thought about it. For 17 years, he'd kept this private, had never used Aaron for PR, had never exploited their relationship for a heartwarming story about a rich athlete helping his disadvantaged brother. These visits had been personal, sacred, but maybe there was value in sharing the story, not to make himself look good, but to make people think about luck and privilege and circumstance, to make people understand that the difference between success and failure is often not merit but opportunity. Before making any decision, LeBron drove to the prison to talk to Aaron. He needed his brother's permission. This was Aaron's story too. "A reporter knows about us," LeBron explained during the visit. "They're going to write something. I can try to stop it, or I can tell the story myself, our way. But I won't do anything without your permission. This is your life, your privacy." Aaron thought about it for a long time. "What would you say if you told the story? The truth, that we're brothers, that I've been visiting you, that our lives could have easily been reversed, that luck matters more than people want to admit, that the system fails people, that I'm not better than you, I just got luckier." You think people will understand that, or will they just see another celebrity doing charity for a fuck-up relative? "I don't know," LeBron admitted. "Maybe both. But I think some people will understand. And maybe it'll help someone, some kid who feels trapped, some family dealing with incarceration, someone who needs to understand that success isn't just merit." Aaron nodded slowly. "Okay, tell it. But on one condition, you don't make me a victim or a charity case. Tell the truth. I made bad choices. I hurt people. I'm in here because I put myself here. Yes, circumstances mattered, but I had agency too. I don't want to be an excuse for other people to avoid responsibility." Deal. LeBron decided to talk about it. Did an interview where he explained everything, finding out about Aaron, the visits, the attempts to help, the failures, the ongoing relationship. But he also expanded on the deeper implications. He talked about privilege in a way he never had publicly before. People always ask, "LeBron, what's your secret? How did you make it out of poverty?" And I used to say hard work and dedication. And yeah, those mattered. But that's not the whole truth. The whole truth is, I got lucky. My mum stayed clean when Aaron's mum couldn't. I was tall and athletic when Aaron was. Yeah, he's tall too, but he wasn't quite NBA level. I had coaches who saw potential in me when nobody saw it in Aaron. I got 1,000 lucky breaks, and Aaron got 1,000 unlucky ones. We're not that different. I just got luckier. The interviewer pushed back. "But you made good choices. Aaron made bad ones. Doesn't that matter?" Of course it matters, but choices aren't made in a vacuum. When you're 14 and hungry, and your mum can't pay rent, selling drugs isn't just a bad choice, it's a rational response to an impossible situation. When you're surrounded by people who've all been in prison, prison seems inevitable, not avoidable. When nobody expects anything from you except failure, why work hard to succeed? Aaron made bad choices, absolutely, but he made them in circumstances that made those choices seem reasonable, even necessary. I made good choices in circumstances that supported those good choices. That's the difference, he continued. I visit Aaron because he reminds me that my success isn't proof of my superiority, it's proof of my luck. And that means I have a responsibility to use what I have to change the circumstances that create Aarons in the first place. Because there are thousands, millions of Aarons out there. Kids with potential who won't realize it because the system is designed to fail them. And if I can change that system, even a little bit, then maybe my luck means something beyond just me. The interview went viral. Some people praised LeBron for his compassion and honesty. Others criticized him for not doing more, for letting his brother end up in prison twice. Some said he was using Aaron for publicity, even though he'd kept it private for 17 years. Everyone had an opinion. But the most impactful response came from Aaron himself. From prison, he wrote a statement that LeBron shared publicly. "My brother LeBron doesn't owe me anything. He didn't create the circumstances that led to my life turning out differently than his. He's been more supportive than I had any right to expect. I've made my own choices, and I live with the consequences. But I appreciate that he's never given up on me, even when I gave up on myself. That's what family is. Not perfection, just not giving up." He continued. "People want to make this story about LeBron being a hero, or me being a victim. It's neither. It's about two people born into poverty, with an absent father. One of us had enough support and opportunity to escape. One of us didn't. That's not heroism or victimhood. That's just reality. The question isn't whether LeBron is a good person for visiting me. The question is why we live in a society where kids like us have to choose between basketball scholarships and drug dealing as our only ways out of poverty. Fix that, and you won't need as many heroes or have as many inmates." Aaron's statement shifted the entire conversation. It wasn't about LeBron's character or Aaron's failures. It was about systems, structures, opportunities, and the lottery of birth circumstances. The story sparked a broader conversation about mass incarceration, systemic poverty, the school-to-prison pipeline, and how circumstance shapes outcome. People started talking about how many Aarons there were, people with potential who never got the support or opportunities needed to realize it. Think tanks studied the story. Sociologists used it as a case study. Prison reform advocates cited it in testimony before Congress. It became bigger than LeBron and Aaron. It became a symbol of the deeper issues with how American society treats poverty, crime, and punishment. LeBron used the moment to launch a new initiative through his foundation, supporting families with incarcerated members, providing resources for re-entry, funding addiction treatment programs, and creating mentorship opportunities for at-risk youth. He also started visiting other inmates, not just Aaron. Once a month he'd go to different prisons in Ohio, talking to groups of inmates about their lives, their circumstances, their potential. He'd listen to their stories, recognize their humanity, and offer what support he could, not money, but acknowledgement, encouragement, connection. "These men aren't monsters," LeBron said after one such visit. "They're people who made mistakes, often in circumstances that made those mistakes almost inevitable. Some of them have done terrible things, I'm not excusing that, but most of them are capable of change, capable of growth, capable of becoming better. But our prison system isn't designed for rehabilitation. It's designed for punishment and warehousing, and that's a failure of all of us, not just them." One inmate LeBron met during these visits, a 23-year-old named Marcus serving time for burglary, told LeBron something that stayed with him. "Nobody ever asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. They just asked what I was going to do to survive, like my future was already decided, like prison was inevitable. And when everyone expects you to fail, failing feels like the only option." Your brother Aaron, same thing. He's not weak. The system was just stronger. LeBron realized that Marcus was right. Aaron wasn't weak. He'd survived 38 years in circumstances that would break most people. He'd gotten clean in prison, educated himself, tried to become better despite every obstacle. That wasn't weakness, that was strength. The narrative around Aaron began to shift, at least in some circles. He wasn't just LeBron's brother in prison, he was Aaron McClelland, a person with his own story, his own struggles, his own small triumphs. Prison reform advocates started corresponding with him. A sociology professor at Ohio State wrote a paper about his case. A documentary filmmaker wanted to include him in a project about mass incarceration. Aaron declined most of these opportunities. "I'm not trying to be famous for being LeBron's brother or for being in prison," he told LeBron during a visit. "I'm just trying to do my time, get better, and maybe help a few other guys in here not make my mistakes. That's enough." But he did agree to speak to one group, at-risk youth from Akron, brought to the prison as part of a Scared Straight type program. LeBron had arranged it, wanting these kids to hear from both sides, LeBron's success story and Aaron's cautionary tale. Aaron was brutally honest with the kids. "You're looking at me thinking, I'll never end up like that. That's what I thought too. I thought I was smarter than this, stronger than this. But here I am, 38 years old, spent half my life in prison. You know how I got here. One choice at a time. Each choice seemed small, each choice seemed necessary, but they added up, and now I'm here, and LeBron's out there, and the only difference between us is luck and choices. So make better choices than I did. Get lucky if you can. But mostly, understand that your choices matter, even when it feels like they don't." One kid raised his hand. "But how do you make good choices when all the choices are bad? Like my family needs money. School isn't teaching me anything useful. Jobs around here don't pay enough to live on. What am I supposed to do?" Aaron looked at LeBron, who nodded for him to answer honestly. "That's real," Aaron said.
Sometimes all the choices are bad. But even then, some bad choices are worse than others. Selling weed to help your mum pay rent? That's a bad choice that might get you arrested but probably won't ruin your life. Armed robbery? That's a bad choice that will ruin your life and hurt other people. If you're going to make bad choices, and sometimes you have to, make the least harmful ones, and look for any opportunity to make a good choice, even if it seems impossible, because good choices compound too, just like bad ones. It wasn't a perfect answer. It didn't solve systemic poverty, or give these kids real solutions, but it was honest, and sometimes honesty is all you can offer. Aaron's story isn't unique, LeBron said at the initiative's launch. There are millions of people who could have been anything but ended up in prison, because they didn't have support systems or opportunities. That's not a personal failure, that's a systemic failure, and we need to fix the systems, not just judge the individuals. Aaron's current sentence ends in 2025. LeBron will be there when he gets out, not to save him, not to fix him, just to be there, as a brother, as a reminder that someone cares, as a connection to family, however complicated that family may be. And when Aaron gets out this time, LeBron has only one plan: introduce him to Bronny, Bryce and Zuri. Let them meet their uncle. Let them understand that family is complicated, that people make mistakes, that love doesn't require perfection. I want my kids to know their Uncle Aaron, LeBron explained to Savannah when discussing this plan. Not because he's a role model, he's not, but because he's family, and because his story teaches something important: how lucky we are, how easily life can go wrong, how important it is to support people even when they mess up. Those are lessons I want my kids to understand. The story of LeBron and Aaron isn't a feel-good tale with a perfect ending. Aaron might succeed after his 2025 release, or he might fail again. He might stay clean, or he might relapse. He might build a stable life, or he might end up back in prison. But regardless of how Aaron's story ends, the relationship between these two brothers, one a billionaire superstar, one an inmate, tells us something profound about success, failure, circumstance, and grace. They share DNA. They share a father who abandoned them. They share poverty and struggle in their childhoods, but they don't share outcomes. And that difference isn't primarily about character or merit or work ethic. It's about luck, about who got the breaks and who didn't, about who had a support system and who fell through the cracks. LeBron visits Aaron because Aaron is a living reminder of how thin the line is between success and failure, how easily LeBron's life could have been Aaron's life, how grace, not merit, determines so much of who succeeds and who doesn't. And that's a lesson worth remembering, for LeBron, for all of us, because we're all one or two bad breaks away from a very different life. We're all closer to Aaron than we'd like to admit, and if we were in Aaron's shoes, with his mother, his circumstances, his lack of opportunities, we might have made the same choices. That doesn't excuse the choices, but it explains them. An explanation leads to compassion, and compassion leads to change. That's why LeBron has visited his brother in prison for 17 years, not for publicity, not to be a hero, but because Aaron is his brother, and family doesn't give up, even when giving up would be easier, even when the person has given up on themselves. Especially then. This story is fiction inspired by real questions about privilege, circumstance, and family. Aaron McClelland is a real person who has publicly claimed to be LeBron's half-brother, though LeBron has never confirmed or denied this relationship publicly. The prison visits, conversations, and specific details in this story are fictional dramatizations. The themes, however, are real. How much of success is merit versus luck? How do we help family members who struggle? What do we owe to people who share our blood but not our circumstances? These are questions worth exploring, even through fiction. If this story makes you think about your own privilege, your own family, your own responsibility to others, then it served its purpose.